Thank you, Gordon. President Dennis, no, modeling a t-shirt is not in my career. To all the fellow Rotarians, thank you for having me. It was about a year ago when I launched my first tour of the state of Iowa with Engage Iowa. As a matter of fact, I've spoken to so many Rotary clubs. I think there's 70 or 75 Rotary clubs around the state that Rotarians were starting to ask me if I was running for governor. And I had to assure all the Rotarians that I was not running for district governor of Rotary. For all the non-Rotarians, that's an inside Rotary joke. Now, we started off last year. Engage Iowa is an organization that focuses on three issues: the economy, the environment, and education. And we launched our tour last year talking about the economy and the environment, specifically as it relates to the economy, tax modernization of our state, making our state income tax simple, fair, and competitive, and as it relates to the environment, addressing water quality. So what's happened in the last year since we've been talking about some of those issues? Well, there's a little more chatter in the state on both tax modernization and water quality. On the tax modernization side, nothing got passed this legislative session. There was a couple bills towards the end of the session that were introduced, but nothing was passed. As a matter of fact, we actually took a step backward this year as it relates to our tax policy in the state. Normally every year the state couples with what the federal government does. And this year they did not. And basically the effect of that was to make our system more complicated. And those CPAs in the audience know that. Some section 179, but basically it says that farmers no longer can take that accelerated or bonus depreciation. Doesn't really make too much sense. We have a struggling farm economy, and to take the accelerated depreciation away from a farmer probably minimizes what they would do from an investment standpoint. They also took away the depreciation for small business too. But it wasn't just the small business people and farmers. They took away the effect of not coupling. We all know teachers, right? And teachers oftentimes buy a lot of supplies in their room for their classroom, and they were able to deduct $250, up to $250. That deduction was taken away. And homeowners that don't have enough equity in their house have to buy mortgage insurance, but they get to deduct that, or at least they used to. So when you lose your deductions and the rate stays high, guess what? Your taxes go up, and the net effect of not coupling is about $100 million tax increase on the selected people of Iowa. So not exactly the direction that we want to go from a tax simplification and fairness and making our system more fair. I don't really blame the legislature. I kind of blame the administration. They tried last year to not couple, and the legislature said, no, we're going to couple, both Democrats and Republicans, and they did last year, but this year they were backed into a corner and weren't able to do it. On the issue of the environment, again, a lot of chatter, and there was a few proposals on water quality, but in the end, you can have 100 proposals, right? If no one agrees on one, then you really have nothing. In 2008, Cedar Rapids had this devastating flood, the worst flood in the state's history. But what also happened in 2008 is the Gulf Hypoxia report was released, talking about this dead zone, how it's getting bigger, and how we have to make an effort to shrink it. And we do that by reducing the phosphorus and nitrates that flow down into the Gulf of Mexico. We've made great progress here in Cedar Rapids, haven't we? We've actually completed flood recovery, and we're building for the future. The state has yet to put a payment plan together for water quality. The easiest thing to do is the 3/8 penny for the Natural Resource and Outdoor Protection Trust Fund. It's simple, it's annual, it's sustainable, it's constitutionally protected, but as of now, there's been inaction on it. But I'm not here to talk about those first two E's of the economy and the environment. I'm here to talk about that third E of our effort on Engage Iowa, the economy, the environment, and education, and specifically K through 12. Education, and what I believe in our state, we are at a reflective point. And maybe I could be so bold to say that we're at one of those gut check points in our state. And why are we at this gut check point? Because of this new law that was passed this last legislative session, this new law dealing with collective bargaining and the whole education 12, K through 12 system. You ever played that game when you were a kid? It's called Chutes and Ladders. It was a fun game, wasn't it? It's a pretty simple game. You take this peg and you move your way through the board, and there's sometimes when you hit the right spot on that board, the ladder let you advance. But then sometimes if your peg hit another spot, you took that slide down to the bottom. And the goal of the game was to climb all the ladders and get to the top. And if you did, you won. But if you hit one of those slides and you slide all the way to the bottom, you lost. Isn't that game so indicative of our lives, our personal lives, times that we're climbing the ladder and other times that there's setback? That game is also indicative of the point that we're at in our state as relates to K through 12 education. The decisions we make as the state now will determine whether we climb the ladder of success and win, or hit that slide and slide all the way to the bottom and lose. So what changed? What is this collective bargaining law that we've been hearing about for the last 3 or 4 months during this legislative session? Well, basically, the law put teachers' salaries on a formula. Now I see some people in the retirement age, those of you that are on Social Security, you know what it's like living on a formula as a Social Security recipient. About one time a year, the federal government determines, based on that particular time, what the increase is going to be in your Social Security check at that one point in time. There have been years where the federal government said 0% increase in your Social Security, only to see like oil spike a few months later, where if the Social Security decision would have been made that month, you would have received an increase. How's that formula working out for senior citizens across the state and across the country? I don't think you'll find too many fans of it, because you get just a cost of living increase, and then coupled with your other expenses, maybe Medicaid increases or Medicare increases on your Part A or Part B or your supplement, that many people that are retired feel like they're almost falling behind when they're retired. Why do you think we saw so many retirees go into the workforce? I don't think that formula is really working too well for retirees, but it isn't just people that formulas can affect. It can affect communities. Cedar Rapids, we're pretty familiar with a formula, aren't we? We call it a benefit cost ratio formula. It's from the Corps of Engineers. And they say to the city of Cedar Rapids, this is our formula. We can't propose protecting the west side of your community, all the residents and businesses, but our formula does allow us to participate on the east side and protect the east side. Well, I suppose one side's better than none, right? Until the formula now throws us in with all the federal projects, and we lose out when we're compared to other communities. So here's what the teacher formula is. I don't have like 3 hours, but let me just read this to drive home the point. With respect, this is in the state law that just passed. With respect to any increased base wages, the arbitrator's award shall not exceed. I want to point that word out, exceed. What does exceed mean? It means you can't go above. It's the top. It's the ceiling. The ceiling. They put a ceiling on teachers' salaries, not to exceed the lesser of the following percentages any one period in the duration of the collective bargaining agreement. 3%, or the percentage equal to the increase in the consumer price index for all urban consumers for the Midwest region, if any, determined by the United States Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, or a successor index. Such percentages shall be changed in the consumer price index for a 12-month period. Are you getting my point? I'm not even halfway done with it. Beginning 18 months prior to the 1 month in which the impasse item regarding the base wages was submitted to the arbitrator, blah, 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 blah. That's how we're going to treat teachers. We're going to put them on a formula. I went back and I thought, well, what if this law was in effect for the last 10 years? Where would we be as a state? So took the state of Iowa's numbers and went back 10 years and put them through this formula. Now I know what some people will say, well, that's just the arbitrator's award. That's just giving guidance to the arbitrator. There's not going to be any arbitration. The results are already in the code. There's no sense in arbitrating something that's already predetermined through the arbitration process. Nothing's going to be arbitrated, but this number will become a magnet to where all of our school districts start to settle. This formula that was developed. So I ran those numbers. Guess where our teachers' salaries would be today if we had this law in effect and all people got was a cost of living adjustment of $6,000 less. Our teachers would today be making $6,000 less today than they would be had we followed that formula for the last 10 years. So where do we go on our teacher ranking then? Today we're currently 23rd. 23rd in the country. Where would we be today if we were $6,000 less? Well, we'd be probably 39th. Our battle cry shouldn't be move over Mississippi. Here we come. We should want to be heads and shoulders above Mississippi. And we've made great progress on increasing teacher salaries, and why do we do it? We did it for a couple simple reasons. One, we're going to be faced with a huge teacher shortage, like we are in many industries and careers and professions. But also we want to attract the best and the brightest into the teaching profession. Right now they have a lot of options. They can be doctors and lawyers and engineers, so many other careers that provide more advancement and more money than now how we're going to treat teachers through a formula. How are we going to attract the best and the brightest? Now you may think I'm critical of the bill. I'm really critical of this formula within the bill, but I understand why the bill was passed. The legislature wanted to shake things up a little bit. Wanted to be a disruptor in the K through 12 system. That probably needs to be done, but if you're going to be a disruptor, on the other end of the disruption, you better start laying out a vision for where you want to go after the disruption. I played a little football back in high school and college, and after every game, the coach would bring all the team in, and we would watch game films. And we would watch those game films, and they would have that clicker, and we'd review every play. Every missed block, every missed tackle, and even all the great hits. But after about 2 hours, we stopped. And the coaches put those game films in the can and put them up on the shelf. Why? Because if we spent the whole week reviewing game films, we'd never prepare for the next game for the next week. So it's okay to look at this bill and run the game films on it. We have to put it on the shelf because it is what it is, and start turning our attention to the future of our state. So what are the 3 things that Iowa needs to do if we're going to climb the ladder versus make the slide? Well, the first thing we have to do is every school district needs to put together a pay-for-performance plan. Each one of them needs to do this. We've just determined that a base pay only is a slide to the bottom. We don't want that, so how do we climb to the top? They have to put together pay-for-performance plans. Every school district needs to jump on this immediately. We have time, but we don't have time to squander. It takes a while to put these plans together. It's take a year to develop them, and then probably a year to implement them. And then after they're implemented, another year to review whether they're working or not. Now, pay-for-performance historically has always been opposed by the teachers. They never want to do it. They think it's always subjective, and what are we going to be judged on? And they always resist it. They can't anymore. By resisting, we'll take the slide to the bottom. So they have to participate now in a pay-for-performance plan. The school districts, they've been wanting to do this for years. Take our best teachers and pay them more. Take our best teachers and reward them more. Finally now, school districts can do that. School boards are more important now, and superintendents are more important now than they've ever been. They need to put these pay-for-performance plans together now, and they have to start acting on it. I love irony sometimes. This formula that was supposed to take the shackles off of school boards and superintendents and release them so they could do this, I checked to see what this basic consumer price index was. You know what the number was for the month of March? It was 1.9. For the month of February, it was 2.4. And for the month of January, it was 2.2. Do you know how much schools got this year? They got 1.1. Isn't that something? They wanted to change the law so school districts would have flexibility. Now they just forced school districts, if they settled one of those months, to actually give more than they were receiving. So I give you $110 and tell you have to give your school teacher $190. You're short, right? Where are you going to come up with the difference, right? Well, out of the existing budget. Where are you even going to come up with money to pay for your performance-based? The math doesn't work. Now, it might work at the federal government. They'll just print money and go into debt, but it doesn't work at the local school district. Irony. They take the shackles off the hands only to have the feet tied. Either way, they're bound. So there'll be some school districts that can do it. They can do base plus performance pay. Ankeny, Waukee, College Community, Linn-Mar, some of the growing school districts can because they have extra revenue from a property tax base that's growing, from an industrial base that's growing, from new students. What about all the school districts that have flat enrollment or declining enrollment? How are they going to do it? They won't be able to. Then you have the whole system sliding. So maybe some of the school districts have money can do it, but the ones that don't have money. If I was a rural legislator or any legislator that represented a district with declining or stagnant enrollment, that'd be the first thing next year I'd be advocating for. And what we need is a pay-for-performance fund at the state level so we can balance out the inequities, not increase them on this pay-for-performance effort. So number one, We can't live on the base alone. Teacher salaries are going to slide to the bottom. It'll be move over Mississippi. It's got to be base plus, and it has to be performance-based pay. And we have to make sure that other school districts aren't falling behind, so the state needs to put together a pay-for-performance fund. Second issue, principals are also tied into this. Principals' worlds have changed. Just as the teacher's world, the principal's world have changed. So the second thing we need to equip principals. Gone are the days where you're working with the same teacher year over year. In Janesville, Wisconsin, they had 12% turnover. Parents aren't used to that. I used to go into the same teacher year after year. Oh, another Corbett kid. Yeah, teacher, we love you. She loves us. She knows the system. I worked in an industry with high turnover. It's difficult. Are our principals ready for that? Are our principals ready to evaluate teachers on this new paper performance? I don't know that they are. We need to create in our state a principal leadership academy. We did it for teachers a couple years ago, but it didn't include the principals. Talk about the forgotten men and women in the education system. It's the principals. Yes, you need the teacher, the effective teacher in the classroom, but the principal's the team leader. They're the building leader. You got to give them the tools to lead. They need to be equipped and trained. They need to be given more authority on who they hire too. They shouldn't just get the teachers that are on hand. They should be able to handpick the teachers. You have to give them authority. We gave it to Kurt Ferentz, right, when he came in as head coach. We gave it to Jeff Pomerantz when he came in here as the leader of the city of Cedar Rapids. You have to give the principals the leadership skills and equipment. We need to have a principal leadership academy in this state. So 1, paper performance for our teachers. 2, principal leadership. And the third, we can't throw in the towel on K through 12 education. I know there's a strong debate and this movement to go to a wide open voucher system. And we can have a debate on whether that's the right way to go, and people think that's going to solve the challenges in K through 12. Now, I'm in favor of school choice. I was in the legislature when we allowed people to homeschool. I was in the legislature when we allowed tax credits in support of AEAs for the private schools. And I was in the legislature when we did open enrollment. And we tried passing charter schools. That's about the only thing we don't have is charter schools. So maybe there's room for a few charter schools. But we can't take the public resources and spread them so thin that it undermines K through 12 education. What we need is innovation within the system, creativity to unlock it. Think about it. This system has been burdened with rules and regulations from the state government and the federal government for years. All it's done is zap the life out of schools. But we're seeing some signs of life when our school district here is putting in the magnet schools, and especially Iowa Big. How about Iowa Big? You go there and you just see the smiles on the kids' faces. They get up every day, they're ready to go to school, they're ready to learn, and the teachers feel like they're free. But that innovation didn't come without the support of the private sector and the donations of time and resources from the business community. And of course, the super schools, that the $1 million grant that the city of Cedar Rapids got from XQ Super Schools. That's amazing that they could do that and help this innovation and creativity within the system. But what about all the school districts that don't have a big business base? What about the school districts like the only business they maybe have is the grain elevator? Well, what about them? Shouldn't they be incentivized to innovate also? But what can they do if they don't have the support like some of the larger school districts do? The state needs to come up with an innovative fund. They need to be able to support innovation every day. What happens is they come up with this issue du jour, long laundry list of flavor of the month type proposals, and about every 3 to 5 years, there's a big education reform package, right? We need innovation every day, every year in our schools. And I think our public schools are ready for it. and they hunger for it. But it won't happen unless there's some type of innovative fund at the state level that taps into that private sector money that allows our schools to innovate. You know, sometimes we make things so difficult. And sometimes the answer is so simple. Supporting our teachers through performance-based pay to pay the best and the brightest, a leadership academy to equip our principals, and an innovation fund to help our school system innovate. Sometimes the best approach is to focus on the basics. You know, education in the state of Iowa has been the bedrock of our state. It's been our selling point. It's been our edge. What happens if we slide to the bottom and we lose our edge? And we wake up 10 years from now and the headlines are teachers' salaries 49th, Iowa's system slipping. That isn't a headline that any of us would want. But if there are those headlines, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So I'll be going around Iowa a second time. This time I'm going around talking about education and trying to find champions of public education in our state. I'm going to be one, and I hope you'll join me. Thank you.